Hello everyone and welcome back to Astrophysicist Plays. I decided to get a capture card so that I could do some recording of The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and talk a little bit about some of the physics in it. Now, this is a game that has a lot of different puzzles in it, and it's hard to decide exactly what to talk about in this. So I decided, let's just talk about physics in general and the general problem-solving approach using the tools that the game gives us. And we'll go through that, how to think like a physicist, how to solve problems, and hopefully that'll give you a good idea both of how to proceed in the game and how to think about things in real life. So for that purpose, I bring you here to the Hyrule Castle Town ruins, and instead of going with any of the challenges the game poses us, I am posing you a challenge of my own. This is a challenge that'll actually come in useful for you in various ways as you build things. The challenge is build an airplane. Now, I have a few important rules for this challenge. The first rule is limiting what materials we have available. So first, we're going to limit it to the construction materials available right here, just outside the outpost and or in the Castletown ruins. Plus, you can take out Zonai devices for however many fans and wings you want. Secondly, you are allowed one battery worth of powder, which is the default amount you start with. Obviously, if you go to more batteries, you can greatly extend your flight range, but we're just going to limit it to one battery to make things interesting. And the final, most important rule is you're limited to Ultra Hand. No use of recall, and that's for one simple reason, which I'll show you right now in case you haven't figured this trick out yourself. Recall makes it far too easy to take off with an airplane. So I'll demonstrate right here, and you can find this useful if you want to make a quick lift off, although it isn't as useful if you want to solve a physics challenge. So, what you do to take off with recall, first use the Ultra Hand, lift your plane up, hold it there for a few seconds, bring it back down, jump on it, use recall, and it'll bring you up in the air. Take out a weapon, give the fan on the back a hit, and cancel recall. And if you did things right, you'll be able to take off with this. Now you can see here I wasn't quite able to get off the ground with it, but you can rectify that with a couple of fans, giving yourself just a bit more power to work with. Now for our purposes, this isn't quite as much fun as it's a bit too easy, and it's not something that can actually be done with the laws of physics. Yeah, and if you have a bit more space to work with, like if you put it over a cliffside, you can get away with just one fan, but two fans should be enough to do it right here. So let's just try that again. Ooh, and we are just barely able to take off. So that's a simple trick you can use if you want to get a plane going wherever you like. Now, we're limited by battery power here, but if you expand your battery power, use Zonai charges, or find a battery out in the wild that you can attach to your craft to power it, you'll be able to go a lot further. Eventually, the fans or wing itself will give out, so you can't get infinite flight with it, but you can get across a lot of chasms. But now, let's go back to the problem we've posed. We want to build a plane, and achieve flight without using the recall ability. So let's take stock of everything we have to work with. So we've got a half-built wagon here, missing a couple of wheels. Various boards, some square, some small rectangles, some large rectangles, and some posts, essentially, and a bunch of wheels, and one jointed board over here. Plus, of course, all of the fans and wings we might want. So, our problem is, we want to make a plane which flies as far as possible using just one battery worth of power. So, how do we do this? Well, let's break the problem down into steps. The first step is we need to fly, which means we need to get off the ground. And that means that we need some sort of force propelling us upwards. So if you've taken a high school physics course, you might remember what's called free body diagrams, whereas you take an object, in this case we care about Link here, and you think about all forces applied to him. So gravity is always applied to him, pulling down, and when he's on the ground resists that, pushing him up, but when you're in the air, you'll need something else pushing him up, or on the ground to take off, you'll need something else extra to help him take off. So what do we do to get up in the air? Well, none of the construction materials here, at least on their own, are any use. If we put enough together, we might be able to construct a lever that could propel us up, but that'll just get us started in the air and won't keep us going, so that's not very useful. We're going to have to rely on one of the two allowed devices, either the fan or the wing. So let's take a few of these out and talk about them. So first, the fan. The fan is simple. It provides a force in one direction. It's a small but not negligible amount of force and lasts for a long while. The wing is more complicated. On its own, just sitting there, it does nothing. But when it's moving forward, it provides a lift force lifting up. It also gets a bit more complicated if it's flying at an angle. So when it's flying down, it provides not just a lift force up, but the lift force is angled perpendicular to the wing here. So if you imagine it's flying down, then there will be a force pulling it up and to the left. So we have two sources of force to work with here. So let's put the wing aside, let's just go through the basics for now. We want to go up and we want to go forward in order to achieve our goal. So one force to push us up, one force to push us forward. So thinking about that, the absolute simplest thing we can do is take one fan, point it down so it'll give us force up. Another fan, point it back so it'll give us force forward. Hop on and see what happens when we go. And it tumbles off and is profoundly useless, as most of you could have predicted by the fact that it can't even sit upright on its own. Okay, so that's the obvious, probably even so obvious most of you wouldn't think to try it, but it sometimes helps to go through these basics to understand what problems we're going to face. So the problem we faced here is stability. That we can put things in those two forces, but we very quickly get off balance. So if we want force to push us up and forward, we need things to be better balanced. Now, we can try giving ourselves a bit more to work with if we want. So let's take out a board here and try attaching the fans to it so that we have a bit more space to stand on and hopefully it won't tumble over quite as quickly, and see what happens. It still tumbles over. Can we counteract the fan? Not really, but let's just see how this goes. Okay. This is moderately better. Having the board here to stand on does allow us to go further, but we run into a couple of problems. One, things are heavier now, so we're not actually getting off of the ground. And two, the board itself is destructible. We can solve that latter problem by using a weapon that doesn't deal quite as much damage. But getting off the ground is going to be harder. So, okay, we need to apply more force to get off the ground. The obvious solution to that is more fans. So, let's take out a couple more fans. Now, let's think through. How many more do we need? It isn't immediately obvious, so I'm just going to take out 4 or so, and we'll see how it goes. We could also make things a little bit easier by using a smaller board, which won't weigh as much. So, let's first try attaching it with 2 on the bottom, 1 on the back. See how that goes. Okay, do we have takeoff? Yeah, I wouldn't say we're making much progress, though. For one thing, it only has 1 fan actually attached to it. This is one quirk of the crafting system, that when you do an attachment, it only attaches to 1 other object at a time. So when I tried to put it on both fans, it only attached to 1. So, let's fix that. Try again. Okay, still facing stability issues. This time we're falling to the side. So let's try to balance things out side to side and see if that helps. Let's grab a square board so we have a bit more to work with. And we'll put the fans below in a triangle shape. So the triangle shape is very useful for stability, as it's the simplest shape that covers 2 dimensions. This means that when we're trying to balance something, having things arranged in a triangle gives us the fewest possible points of support that will give us a solid area to work with where we can have the center of mass. So, let me put this over and show you what I mean. This is, essentially right now, this is just a 3-legged table. So, with 3 points of support, you can draw a triangle out between these, and anywhere within the triangle, we can put the center of mass of the whole thing and be balanced. Now, Link isn't heavy enough on his own to disrupt the center of mass by standing over here outside the triangle, but if we were to drop a boulder on it, that would be enough to flip the whole thing up. So that means that when we start flying, or if we start flying, we have a much more balanced area to work with. So let's put 1 on the back to give us some forward thrust and see how things go. Getting up again? Ah, we're facing another problem now. Okay. So, new problem. If you remember what happened, the front of this went up a lot more than the back did. Now, the reason for this is that when we're applying force upwards, the forces weren't balanced around the center of mass. We had more going up on the side with 2 fans than we did on the side with 1 fan. This resulted in things being unbalanced and the whole thing tipping over. If we want to fix that issue, we need to put 2 fans on this side so that the force upwards is balanced. Okay, flip that over again, and let's get 1 more fan to work with and put on the back. Okay. One more try. Still not working. Okay. So now, although the force on this board at the bottom is balanced, which you can see if we flip it over and go without the fan on the back, we should be able to get up in a reasonably balanced way. Yeah. So, we can go up like this, and if we tilt, we can move forward a bit. It gets into a bit of a crash landing, but we actually, at this point, have something that we could just say is achieving powered flight. The problem is we're not getting forward very quickly. And if we put this back on, suddenly we're off balance again. So if we want to balance it out, we need to balance the weight of a fan at one end with the weight of a fan at the other. There are a few ways we could do this. One, we could try to move the fans at the base closer to the center so that those aren't contributing as much. Or we could add a sixth fan to our craft on the opposite side, but blowing in the same direction, which should be overall balanced. So let's see how this goes. We're still just a little bit off balance. Okay, so let's try to figure out what the problem is here. Where are we off balance? So you can see that balance is a very finicky issue. If you're even slightly off balance in a craft like this, the whole thing will tumble over. So it looks like here maybe the issue is the two fans on top, and we need to move that one off to the side, though it's actually not letting us move it off much. Let's just try it like that, see how we get on. No. Okay, too heavy there. Let's give this one more go, just adjusting it. See if we have any luck. Oh, just wait for the battery for a second. Oh, still too heavy over there. Okay. So I was moving it in the wrong one. My bad. Okay, move this one in a bit more. Yeah, we're only allowed certain anchor points in this game, which is actually... Yeah. Okay, so there's the problem. We're only allowed fixed anchor points. We can move this in all the way to the center is about the only other thing we can do, which is probably going to be balanced in the other direction. Ah. So even now, we tilt forward. So let's think a second about why that is. Why are we getting off balance tilting forward this time? Well, what's going on is that although we've balanced the forces going vertically, we haven't balanced the forces going horizontally. We've got we've got two forces a bit above the center of mass pushing to the left. That results in a net torque, we call it. This is basically the angular equivalent of a force. So we have a net torque rotating us clockwise from this perspective, which causes us to tumble over. So, need a new weapon here. Let's get that out first, and let's see if we can adjust things a little bit so that we're a bit more balanced vertically with the horizontal forces. Let's give that a try, see how it goes. Okay. Yeah, now we've got too much weight at the back, which isn't counterbalanced by the force. So the balance here is a very difficult problem to solve. Let's give it one more try. We'll put these two at the corners. Okay. Let's give that one more go. Ooh, that's actually not so bad. Let's adjust it. Give us some open space to travel on and see how far we get with this, whatever you call it. I definitely wouldn't call this an airplane, as it doesn't get lift via wings. This is somewhat like a helicopter, although a helicopter really only has the primary lift from a single blade at the top. Looks kind of like a hovercraft, so let's call this our hovercraft. And let's see how we go. Yep, we're getting flight here. Gets a little bit off balance, but we did successfully achieve a bit of flight. Not much flight, but a bit. And I'd wager that we might actually be able to do better if we take off these two top fans. Just get on link alone, overbalance it, and do a real crash flight forward. Okay, problem there. We don't have anything up top we can hit to trigger the devices. So let's just take that as a cue. This design is not working for us. So this is an important point in problem solving. Sometimes you'll go down a path for a while, try to optimize things on that path, get a certain way along, and realize this just isn't working. And you could try to optimize more, but sometimes you just have to go back to basics and try something completely different. So here, obviously, the one thing that I've left out from the beginning is these wings, because I just wanted to focus on the fans alone and the forces they cause, which make things a whole lot simpler to work with. So, with a wing, this makes things easier in a lot of ways, actually, but we still have to grapple with the problem of getting off the ground. Now, we could try putting a whole set of 3 or 4 fans beneath it to give us thrust upwards, but that's going to immediately cause a lot of problems. We'll hit all the same balance problems as we did before, and we'll also hit the issue that we're using a lot of power. That was one of the things that resulted in us not being able to go very far before, is that when we had a total of 6 fans on top of our thing, they drained power like nobody's business. And part of the problem is that whenever you add a fan, you also have to have enough lift to lift the weight of that fan. So it is very useful to keep things as light as possible when trying to get lift. So let's start on the basics. In principle, we have all we need here to achieve flight. We have a fan giving us thrust forward, and we have a wing which converts any motion forward into force upwards. So give the fan a whack, and absolutely nothing happens. So now the problem we're facing is the friction of the ground is applying its own force. So frictional forces work a bit differently from forces like from a fan. For the fan, if it's on, it provides a force in one direction. Here, we'll call that forward. And that's it. It only applies a force in that direction. Frictional forces are conditional on other forces. The force of friction, like right now, if you're to ask, what's the force of friction on the wing? Is it applying friction backwards? Well, if it were, then that would be an unbalanced force backwards and would start it moving. If it were friction forwards, it would be an unbalanced force and start it moving forwards. So really right now, friction isn't applying any force to the wing. But if we start up the fan, the wing is pushing it forward and friction is holding it back. So now friction is applying a force backwards. So friction is kind of a conditional force. It'll apply force up to the maximum it possibly can to resist any motion. So the next interesting thing about friction is that there are actually two types of friction. There's kinetic friction and static friction. Kinetic refers to motion, which is the friction of something in motion. So if you imagine I'm dragging this along the ground, friction will be resisting its movement, but that force of friction will be less than the force required to initially start it moving. You can kind of think of it that when it's just sitting there, it settles down a bit and forms a deeper connection with the ground. And you have to apply a bit more force to break it. But once you do, you can keep it going with less force to resist the friction. So in order to get this going, we need to get over the static friction, which is pretty tricky. You know, we could try throwing it a bit with the Ultra Hand, but then we'd have to find some way to hop on top of it. So comparing it to how we've gone before, we've completely changed the problems that we're looking at. Now, instead of stability, balance, and power, our first problem is getting over the friction. Now, in the full game, there are a lot of tools to help deal with friction and allow you to take off, but under our self-imposed challenges here, we aren't allowed to use any of those. So what else can we do to reduce friction? If we put any boards underneath it, this might or might not change the friction. So the reason it might change it is that different materials will have different strengths of friction with different other materials. This is what's known as the coefficient of friction. Now, this coefficient is different for every pair of materials, and it's almost impossible to calculate from theory. You just have to test it in a lab and calculate what it is. Now, here, we're not making any progress, as you probably didn't expect. You wouldn't expect a plank of wood to have significantly lower friction than the wing. In fact, it might even have higher friction. Okay, so that idea is a wash. So what else can we do? Well, one thing we can do is try to get around friction in some way. So looking at what we have to work with, the boards, everything wood isn't working, but we have wheels. So wheels work a bit interestingly with relation to friction. When a reel is rolling, what's actually happening physically is that it does experience friction, but all that friction happens in the axle right at the center of the wheel. Let me use the camera to point. So imagine we have a bar sticking through the center of the wheel. Now normally this will be lubricated very well so that there's very little friction around the axle where the wheel is rotating. This means that if we have something propelled by wheels, instead of the primary friction being between the thing and the ground, the primary friction is around the axle where we've lubed it up to have very little friction. So this allows us to change where the friction is, and that changes what the friction is between, greatly reducing it. We often call this rolling friction, which is actually a complicated combination of static and kinetic friction, and it isn't technically a completely different type, but it's such a complicated mixture that it's useful to think of it as just a different type. So this seems promising, so let's see if we can prop this up on some wheels to get it rolling. Now we have to connect the axles of the wheels here to allow them to roll, and we have to get all wheels facing in the same direction. So we want this to go directly forward, so we look for an attachment point here. That doesn't attach the axle. You could put it on. Okay, so the wingtip is essentially the only attachment point that will work here for a wheel. So let's get another wheel and put it on the other wingtip. And we have something that, well, neither wheel is touching the ground. We could flip it upside down, but this isn't so much a flying machine now as a crashing machine. Yeah. We've just got something that will crash into the ground very quickly because all the force is going to be pushing us down. Okay. So, wheels on the wingtip, they aren't low enough to touch the ground. So, what do we do here? Well, let's try building a bit more structure and see if that will allow us to get the wheels a bit lower. We'll put it upside down to work with. Take off both of these wheels. And let's find the lightest thing we can to provide this structure. So one of these posts. So we'll attach this to the center. And let's see if there's enough room to attach the wheels to either side of it. So where's our attachment point? Is that on the axle? Yes, it looks like we just barely have enough room. We'll have to flip this over and give it a try to see for sure. Nope, that one attached the wrong spot. Okay. And now we're back to the problem of balance. So, we could try moving things up. We can try weighting the back. There's really a lot of ways we can try to fix this. But right now, it's unbalanced enough that the nose is still touching the ground and giving us friction there. So, let's try one more wheel. Now, unfortunately, we don't have much small to work with to prop the nose up. But let's see if maybe we can get one wheel skidding. That might be just enough to get us moving at least. So it looks like there aren't really any attachment points that we can use for the axle here. So our best bet is to put in a wheel at an angle and see if this unwieldy thing might skid better with that wheel there than it did with the nose of it. Let's give that a try. And nope, no progress. Okay. That's not too surprising. Okay. So, remember before we talked about you need a triangle for full stability, which means we're going to need a minimum of 3 points. So, for now, to keep things as light as possible, let's see if we can construct this to work with only 3 wheels. We'll use one more post coming out to the front, and we'll put a wheel on the side of it, facing forwards, and this just might work. Okay, we've got stability there, and can we get rolling? Ooh, not quite. So, what could be the problem here? Now, looking at these wheels, it's possible that one, the way the wheels are attached actually glues them in place and won't let them roll. So it's also possible that we don't have enough force to overcome the initial static friction and start things rolling. So let's investigate that second option first and put a bunch more fans on this and see if we triple the forward force, is that enough to start things going? Okay. No luck there. Okay. So it seems that attaching to these posts has effectively glued the wheels into fixed positions. Or it's at least glued one of them into a fixed position. Most likely the one at the front. Yeah. Looking at this, it seems it's actually attached to the side of the wheel there. So we're going to have to rework things. So I think probably the lightest way we can do this. So the first option is to expand on our current design, add another post. Let me just try that again so it's a bit better center. And actually, if we attach that post directly to the wing, we don't need that center attaching post. That'll save us a bit of weight. And we'll put one wheel on either side of it. And hopefully the wheels will be allowed to spin around this. Okay. Now, the way it illustrates that, I'm not very hopeful that the wheels can spin around these axles, but that's the best we can do with these posts. Any luck? No. Okay. Now, again, it might just be enough, but jostling it around a bit, it doesn't look like the wheels are allowed to spin much. Let me just try putting this at an angle and see. Oh, those front ones are moving. Okay. So, maybe we're just back at the problem of not enough force. So, let's add a couple more fans. See if we can get things going here. Oh, we are... Okay, this is actually a lot better than we had before. There's still a couple of problems we're facing, but I think we're actually on a good track to solving this problem. Now, the first thing I noticed when working with this, you might want to rewind the video to check for yourself, but when we started taking off, have a close look at the back wheels. So I'm going to start this up again and just watch the back wheels again. Yeah, so those skid, but don't rotate. So they're, well, at least the one on that side. Let's watch the one on this side. Yeah, same deal. Just using recall to grab it back, not to cheat here. Okay. Okay, so now, for some reason, the wheels in the back are not rotating yet. Why could this be? It's a bit hard to figure this out. It might be that they're touching the base of the wing, which is what's causing us difficulties, but I'm not entirely sure. So let's try adjusting this. Let's attach it to, let's say, the rear fan. That'll get it out enough. Grab the wheels, and we'll put it back on. No, wrong attachment point. Come on. Okay. So we have a little bit of an issue in that it's now leaning a little bit forwards, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem overall. But we can definitely see now that all the wheels are freely rotating. By the way, it's slowly drifting. It might actually be a bit of the physics engine acting up, as this should be flat ground, but they seem to be drifting backwards. So we'll have to see how that goes. And excuse me, there's a meteor over here. Let me go pick that up. I'll be right back with you. Okay, we're here, and first of all, quick correction. This is not a meteor, it's a meteorite. So the difference is a meteor is something that's falling through the sky. It's entered Earth's, or whatever this planet's called, the atmosphere. A meteorite is something that's hit the ground. So here they're calling it a star fragment. Yeah, meteors are very often called shooting stars because they look like one of the stars up in the sky has just started moving, but that's not actually what's happened. The stars barely move. Some of them you might notice are extremely large timescales, or if you're looking with a telescope. Meteors are chunks of rock. You'll also get comets, which are chunks of rock and ice. And the chunks of rocks just occasionally enter Earth's atmosphere. Okay, yes, I know you want to help your friend, but I'm busy doing physics here, so you'll have to wait for later. I'll be back, don't worry. Okay. I ran into a wild horse here I'm using to help me get back faster. So, while we've got a bit of downtime, let's think about our design so far. So, one thing that happened before is we ended up building something like a hovercraft, which technically worked. We were able to iron out the kinks so that we could fly with it, but we couldn't fly very well with it. And we decided, okay, we've gone down the wrong path, let's try something else. Now this time, we're doing a lot better, but it's also still possible we went down the wrong path at some point, and some other tweak might get us onto an even better course than we were before. Now, let's just think about the steps. What tweak might that be? You know, maybe these posts are heavier than we expected, and we might actually do better if we use one of the smaller rectangles of wood. That's possible, so we might want to give that a try. Okay, let's see now if we can figure out where we left our plane. Did anybody note down the number of the parking spot? Otherwise, we could be here for a while. I feel like it was right over here. Please excuse that. The cats are knocking at the door right now. Does the Ultra Hand light up anything? It's also possible the plane just despawned on us. Okay. Well, star fragment's worth it, so let me get back to building, and this time let me try with one of these planks. Yeah, if you look here, everything here is reset, so in our diversion, everything despawned. Oh well. I did not give you permission to intrude. Okay, it looks like our little intruders decided to leave us alone for now. We'll have to keep an eye out. I've got a club ready, which should be able to handle him. Okay, so let's get out our materials again. So far, we were just using one wing and one fan, which is pretty light on Zona devices. So let's set that up again. And then as we were coming back, we were thinking, okay, we're gonna need 4 wheels in order to allow them to fully rotate. But are the 2 posts going to end up heavier than one small plank? So, you know, having a look at them, it looks like the total mass might actually be pretty similar. I'd say the plank is probably smaller, but, well, let's think like a physicist. Let's do some experimentation here. So, easiest way to compare the masses of a couple of things is with a scale. So, I'm gonna use one of these big boards as basically the lever of a scale. Use one of these as the fulcrum, that's the point it's balancing on. And I'm going to rotate it diagonally. And attach it like that. Well, let's see. Yeah, it should fix us into the center point. And then, yeah, it's pretty well balanced and then just tips off randomly to one side. Good. Okay. So, to weigh things, now, we can just pile things on, see how it goes. But one problem we face there is that with the scale, the farther something is off to the side, the more torque it applies. Yeah, torque is actually what's going on. It's the angular equivalent to force. So if I have that one all the way at the side and put this, you know, midway, it won't turn it over. I'll let that go up. So if I put this down closer, it stays off to that side. Put it a bit further out, it's not enough to overcome the static friction right now. But if I go all the way to the side, it slowly tips over. So, first of all, kudos to Nintendo on the good physics simulation there. You've basically had everything we need to work with for this. Okay, so if we want to compare two things, we're going to want them to be at the same position relative to the center. So let's use the attachment and attach everything to the very edge. So we've got those two boards there, and we'll put this up vertically at the same place. So we don't care about the vertical distance above, just the distance out. Okay, so we might, again, have the static friction problem, so let's just rebalance it. And, okay, so it's very clear the two posts are heavier than the one small plank. Good thing we decided to check that, and the scale actually makes it very clear that you see it tip over very quickly. So they're not just a bit heavier, but a fair bit heavier. So if we want the least amount of mass possible on our plane, using one of these instead of two posts is probably going to give us the best results. Now, we will have to check that we can attach wheels and allow them to be freely spinning. So let's see if that works. Oh, one thing just to make a bit clear. It probably makes sense that the heavier something is, the harder it is to get in the air. But, you know, we should formalize that in physics. So basically, what's going on physics-wise is that we're trying to apply a force to this in order to get it to accelerate. And the way that relates is that the force applied will be equal to the mass of the object times the acceleration of it. Now, in a few weird scenarios, the mass will be changing, and the force then equals mass times acceleration plus velocity times rate of change of mass, but we're getting off on a tangent here. For all our purposes, force is mass times acceleration. Now, it's getting a bit tricky to attach these wheels like this, but let's try creating a cart first and then putting the whole cart onto the plane after it's been created. There's another half-built cart there, but that uses a larger board, and at this point it isn't clear that we need the larger one, so let's not add any mass to it. But anyways, I was saying force equals mass times acceleration. This means that if you want to maximize the acceleration, you increase the force as much as possible, or decrease the mass as possible, or both. So here, we're trying to find the lightest setup possible to decrease the mass as much, and later we'll look at increasing the force. Okay, does this roll? Yes, it does. And again, I'm not sure. I think the ground is meant to be flat, but the physics engine... Well, it's rolling back, so yeah, the wheels here must have very little friction, which is definitely good for us. Okay, let's see if we can put this on the cart without sticking it to any of the wheels. A bit tricky. Let's try the other way, put that upside down. Maybe we'll be able to better look at it like this. Okay. Now we attach to a wheel. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now if we go back here, we can attach it to fan. That might actually work. Okay. This is going to cause potential other problems, but let's see here. Okay. Okay. Do not do this in real life. In real life, we would have more gradients of materials to work with, though, so we wouldn't end up having to do something silly like this. But this works for us. Now, the problem we face is structural stability. Within this game, materials themselves don't bend, but any joint potentially can. So here, if I pick this up and drop it, you can see the wing wiggling a bit relative to the cart. The joints won't break apart, but they will flex a little bit. Here, I don't think the flexing is actually much of a problem for us, though I think we can live with that. This isn't a very realistic design because the joints would just be under too much pressure and would break apart in reality. So let's give this a try though. Start up. Okay, we're already going backwards because the wheels have such low friction. Okay. Okay, are you stable? Okay, you're stable. Okay, let's go. Do we have takeoff? Ooh. Not quite, actually. Okay, let's give that one other go and see. But it could be that this whole assembly ends up being a bit too heavy. Which is interesting, as before we were using the 2 posts, which should be lighter. And we were able to get takeoff, but here, ooh, not quite. We're dragging down. Now that is interesting. So I wonder what's going on. Now, in the real world, maybe what would be happening here is that this big gap is resulting in air being pushed down by the wings, hitting that board, and pushing it down relatively, which could result in us losing lift. But I really doubt they would have simulated that in the game. So it actually makes it interesting that we're not getting as much lift this way as we did with the other assembly. So maybe the issue here is balance, that the lift is a bit too offset from the center of mass. Could be some weird quirk of the physics engine. So let's play around with it and see what else we might be able to do. Let's try some silly things. Let's put that on the front, the fan way on the back. Does that balance out? Okay, this looks ridiculous, but sometimes the things that work look a bit ridiculous. Like, if you look at some of the modern airplane designs we use today, they probably look ridiculous to people who had never seen an airplane before. So let's give this ridiculous thing a go. Okay, we're still too off balance here. Okay, let's adjust this. Can we move it back a bit? And still attach it. Actually, I've got an even sillier idea. What if we start off with this at an angle? This is probably going to fail, but I'm just curious to see what happens. Another rule of physics and problem solving is it's fine to just be curious. Oh, wait. Huh. The back wheels aren't rotating. Wonder why. Do they rotate if we take this off? Huh. Okay, another weird thing happening. Maybe we're just on too high friction of the ground. Maybe the rain is altering the coefficient of friction we have to work with, but for some reason our little cart, okay, yeah, so the fan was causing the problem there. What if we, for whatever reason, the fan was giving us trouble? Okay, put the fan on. Does it still rotate? Oh. Yeah, okay. That's working. Let's go grab our wing. Let's put it on top for balance. We are coming up with all sorts of silly designs, aren't we? Okay, that wasn't what I intended. Silly, yes, but wrong kind of silly. Okay, we've got a blood moon coming now, which might get in our way. Okay, and now we've got the problem that we can't even get on top of this. This might be the point where we declare we've just gone down the wrong rabbit trail here. Yeah, that works. Let's give this one go. See if we can get takeoff. Oh, yeah. Not quite. Okay. Alright, I think we've got stuck in the wrong direction. So, never be afraid to question your premises and how you got to this point, and go back and rethink things. So, tearing it all apart, let's start again. This time, let's try building the cart in the other direction. Another little intruder getting in our way. Okay, let's check that this rolls. Yes, it does roll. Okay. Now, can we attach it? We attach it to the front. Okay, excuse the blood moon. Come on, can't you tell we're busy here? Okay, it didn't break our little construction at least. But yeah, we're still facing the problem that it's tough to connect it to either end. Yeah, we put the fan on the back, but it's just not enough to outbalance the wing. Yeah, okay, the wing's holding us down. Is there any easy way to deal with that? Well, let's try this silly solution again. Can we get on top? Yep, we can. And we're going forward. Wheels are intermittently rolling, but overall, not really any luck. Okay, I'm calling it. This design is a dud. Even despite our experiments that said the single plank should weigh less than the two posts, that doesn't actually seem to be true in practice. So, we had more luck with the two posts, and yeah, I might have to call that something is going wrong with Nintendo's physics engine, because we really get more lift with those, but they are definitely heavier according to our scale. So, yeah, so that one, so this board is a bit heavier than one post, so if we could get this working somehow with just one post, we would have something lighter, but that's going to be tricky to set up. Let's give it a go just in case. Okay, I did find an attachment point. This is going to be pretty precarious, but just might work. Never know until we try. I think, yeah, this wheel is connected. Okay, That should do it, and yeah, this wheel too. Okay, there's a chance this'll work. Okay, are we rolling? Let's put it on a bit of a slope. Yeah, doesn't seem to be rolling, so let's inspect the wheels. Okay. Well, it's hard to judge. It looks like maybe, yeah. One of these wheels not attached at the axle. Oh, yeah. Both of these back ones aren't attached at the axle. Or actually, the front ones. Let's try again, see if that's possible to do. But yeah, I wasn't too hopeful about this design to start with. Yeah. No, this isn't gonna work. It just won't attach to the axle. So, okay. Let's go back to our two-post design. So, next lesson, sometimes when you go back to check if you've gone down the right path or not, you might found that, yeah, the previous path you were on was indeed better than the alternative. There's never any shame to going back to a point where you had more success. Now, I'm still not sure exactly why this was more successful than using the thin board. This definitely should be heavier using the two posts. Maybe there was some problem with connecting the wheels so they could spin, but I'm not entirely convinced with that, as when it stood on its own, it did spin. So it could just be something weird with the physics system in this game. Oh well, experimentation and what works in reality is always what's most important. Theory will get you a lot of the way, but you'll come across surprising things in reality that you don't account for. So you always have to experiment, if at all possible, to find out for sure. Okay. Yeah, seems to be rolling. Okay. Alright, we've got a pretty clear way to go. So let's try this again and see how far we get. Yeah, we're definitely accelerating more. So somehow this is lighter or gives us less friction. But yeah, we're still having the same problem taking off. Okay. Yeah. So in the end, both designs aren't quite taking off. I forget exactly what it was that did take off. Oh, it looks like our wing is about to fail on us here. That's frustrating, but I'll have to come out with another one so that we can actually maintain some flight. Oh, come on. Let me take it out. There we go. I'm attempting these at a diagonal just to space them out a little bit more from the base. Okay. So we don't have quite enough force to lift off. So the simple solution is more forward thrust. So let's attach one fan here, take out another. and attach it at the same position on the other side, so it's balanced. And this should be enough to get us going. Okay, we'll go back here, give us a clean runway, and try to get going. Yeah, that should be good. Okay, and yes, we have liftoff. Success. And this goes until we run out of thrust from the fans and drop almost immediately. Okay. Yeah, we got quite a ways here. I'm definitely going to call that a success. But is it the best we can do? Next step is to see, can we do even better with more force? So this is a bit hard to predict. With more force, we'll definitely start off accelerating more, but we'll also drain our battery a lot faster. So will the extra speed make up for the extra battery drain? It's, you know, we could calculate some predictions, but there are way too many unknowns here. And in the end, experimentation is the best way to test. So again, let's set this up. It's in a central spot. No. There we go. And let's see how this goes. Ooh. Yeah, this one actually isn't doing as well. The extra fan does add more weight to it, and probably because the fan is up so high, we're getting some more torque, which angles it downward. So let's try putting the fan lower to balance that out a bit. Hopefully it's not dragging. Yeah, we might have it dragging. Let's just do a quick test here. Okay, it gets off the ground quickly enough. Alright, take a moment here for the battery to recharge, and we'll set up a good position. After we tried it with 3, we'll go up to 4. So this seems to be getting off the ground very quickly with this amount of force. So we shouldn't need to worry about the friction there. But we'll see if that translates to overall more flight time. Okay, yes, we are off very quickly, but we're also running out of battery very quickly. And in the end, we're actually not going quite as far as we did before. Okay, so there's little point in going up to 4 fans. It seems that the balance of factors overall tells us that 3 fans is worse than 2. Okay, so far, this is our optimal plane design, but there's actually one other variable we haven't played with yet. And that variable is the number of wings. Now, if you think back to early plane designs, you'll actually remember seeing a lot that had 2 layers of wings. And we can do the same thing here and test if this provides us with any overall advantage. Maybe it'll be an advantage with 3 fans, maybe with 2, but let's give it a go, see if the extra wing does us any good. Okay, we have to stand up to trigger these, so we'll have to find some way on top. Can we climb up on our own device? No, that's frustrating. Okay, we'll need some steps, but no cheating there. Plenty of real planes need steps to get inside. Stupid rotation system. One of the frustrating things about this is that you only have 2 axes of rotation, whereas there are actually 3 possible axes, and if you want to rotate around the third, you have to do a complicated combination of rotating around the other 2. So let's see, what's the best way to do it? I'll need another board. Don't need anything fancy here. Just need something that works. There we go. No, we're not getting liftoff here. The 2 wings might result in more overall lift, but it's also a fair bit more weight. Okay, let's give it a try with 1, maybe 2 more fans, just to see what happens, but my gut says we're not going to have much luck that way. Essentially, we've just turned our 1 plane into 2 at this point, but we need the power for both. I'm not even going to bother to get in. Let's just see if this takes off on its own. Oh, it just barely takes off on its own. Okay. 2 planes, not successful. Alright, so going back. Alright, so with 2 fans, we might just have our optimal design here within the constraints of the challenge. So let's just take a moment to think, are there any optimizations we could do? Is there any way we can get down to less mass? So, yeah, maybe I was right and one of the smaller boards is overall better than the 2 posts. Maybe I was misremembering something that happened, so let's give that a try, see how far we get with this board. We go. Okay, let's put this back on. See if we can attach it in a reasonable way. Yeah, that was also the problem with the board, is getting it attached, but I think we were able to figure that out. Oh yeah, the way we did it was putting the fan in the middle. So let's put 2 fans in a row in this design. You know, in reality, this doesn't work as well because you end up with a lot of the force being wasted between the fans. But within the game, I doubt they would simulate that aspect of it. So, let's do it. Silly design again, but give it a try. Oh, lovely. Just lovely. And let's go. Go. Okay. Force is a bit too unbalanced there. And we're also starting to wear out this wing. So let's take it back to the beginning of our runway. And where's the second wing? That one's a bit fresher. No, off to the side. And where's our perfectly made step ladder? Okay, clear the runway. And we're off at an angle, but I think we can manage. Yeah, we have liftoff. We can rebalance a bit. Okay, yeah, we're gonna need to try this again at a better angle. Yeah, the advantage to standing up on top of the plane is that we can manually adjust the balance. Now, this is probably the lightest design, but there's always stability problems. That's one thing we keep coming back to with any of these designs, is whether it's going to be stable. And it's hard to guess exactly where the center of mass is that we should stand. Okay, I'm just getting us up here, recharge, and now let's start. Yeah, we want to allow it to point up a bit to start flying. But once it does start, we can balance a bit, and... Ooh. Yeah, I think... Yeah, the wings are wearing out, but I think this plank is indeed a bit lighter than the two posts, as we did end up getting just a little bit further that time. Now, it might have just been me balancing it better. It's not a notable improvement, but I think overall this is our current record holder. So, let's bring it back to base, and we can marvel at our creation. Alright, let's take a photo of us with our winning creation here. Link, wave to the camera. Close enough. Alright, thank you again everyone for watching today, and I'll have more videos for you soon. I've got more planned for Zelda, got some more for the Outer Wilds planned as well, so I hope everyone enjoys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. And now for today's extra credit question. What effect, imported when flying a plane, is most likely not properly simulated in this game, and why? Leave a comment with your guess and I'll respond letting you know what the correct answer is. Thank you very much, and see you all again.